But I guess it would have to be, I guess the request would have to come through formally, like fill out the permit and ask for permission. I don't see any issue with having people who aren't village residents own a field, but that's my initial reaction. I don't know what the code says, but I know that I know people who live in the village who have had parties on kids' parties on Caroline Avenue Field, Joe Orland Field, and also at the beach and also at Scraggy Hill. So
And I do know that we presently have some softball teams that have resident players. So
The requester is a resident.
the request is.
and they have insurance. They have there's a form for that, right?
If nothing else, it should be an event permit.
Yeah.
So. But if the event is upcoming this Saturday, there's no opportunity for the board to vote on it.
But it's park. What?
When there's a party there, we don't ask, whether
No,
everybody in attendance at the party are resident, non-resident? The
No.
requester is a resident.
no, we don't.
So I don't know.
You certainly have to.
I would always point someone like that to the clerk, right?
I think it becomes a scheduling issue, right? In the event that some other people who aren't as conscientious, who let the village know, show up to have their game or their event, and now there's battling events. So I don't think it would be, if the board's inclined, pursuant to this discussion, to allow it to occur, the paperwork can always catch up, and the proper thing can be filed in the clerk's office. Code could be alerted in case, like, other people show up to use it, that know they've preserved it, just to keep it clean and safe.
Mm-hmm. Agree.
Can I add a second item? Yeah.
I'm gonna leave that to.
I'll speak really, really quickly. I was remiss. The CUC met last night. They finalized their annual report, which we'll send over to the clerk's office for review and be put on file. They received a presentation from Eco League, which is a local environmental advocacy group, and discussed looking into a skip the stuff piece of legislation or policy for Port Jefferson Village. It's being looked at the county level right now. Essentially, what they were advised to do is start by working with the Chamber of Commerce and the bid, because what the legislation would do is have restaurants not automatically give plastic cutlery in the takeout. They would, someone on the phone can ask for it, or a staff member can say, would you like cutlery? But instead of it being this compulsory, sort of someone packs the bag up for you of your Chinese food or tacos, whatever it is, you get that. And often if I get it home, then it's just, you're like, oh, I forgot to say not to put it in, and then it goes in the drawer, and then you just throw it out. So it's both an environmental and potentially a cost saving measure for our businesses. So that would be something that we talked about them speaking to these other bodies in Village first, and then potentially presenting to the board.
Did that come through Myrna Gordon?
That's
A
what
connection from her?
Yeah.
Great.
So that was discussed last night, and then the tree committee is looking into pricing for a canopy study, essentially looking at all of the trees that we have in the village. If they're healthy, do they need work? All that. At the last summer's event that we went to, the conference, there was a company called Planet Geo that both does this work, but also helps municipalities look for grants to do this work. So they're discussing just getting a free quote, to see what price range that would come in as a first step for that. And then they're going to continue on working on their devining educational program to help residents understand the importance of taking vines off their trees. And that.
So they submitted, just in response to the, they submitted a brochure, a draft of a brochure. And it's designed in a way that could be augmented by branding for the village branding. So is that something that you'll do, is move that forward through to Sylvia and Fran to try and get a design that's cohesive with the village brand.
Do you want me to just forward it on with that request?
However, you've done it with past things.
Yeah.
You've
Yeah,
done it that way. Yeah,
so
just
we have
take, if you can take the lead on that, as the liaison to that.
Very good.
Okay. Thank you. So we'll go to trustee Juliana.
Okay. Sit back, Dave.
DPW
DPW update.
Coffee is not.
DPW update. Drainage repair is complete at 52 Homestead. Mill Creek Road parking lot pavement is completed. Remember, it was all dug up because they were putting the grease trap in, so that's been completed. There was a sinkhole that was over at Longfellow Lane. That's been all taken care of, and they are in the process of sealing the parking lot, the cracks in the parking lot pavements throughout the village. Parks update, Rocketship Park repairs are completed. Beaches are opening on June 22nd. Swim area ropes will be installed on the 19th. Parking at the beaches is always resident-only parking. So beach might be open to non-residents, but the parking is always resident only with a proper parking permit. Power washing of the sidewalks in the business area is currently underway by the Parks Department. Parks and Rec Committee update, just one brief bullet point for that. They're requesting, and they're sending out, I don't know if you received an email from Rima yet. They're requesting some sort of increased security at the village center.
We
So,
just got that. It is.
okay, so she said she was going to send it over, so look for that. I attended with the mayor of the Suffolk County Village Officials Association training, spoke with other municipal officials there. Suffolk County legislature is working on the IDA issue that I had always been talking about. A friend of mine, Kevin McCaffrey, who I worked with in Lindenhurst, is the presiding officer at the Suffolk County legislature now. And he talked about that they will be doing something that will instruct the IDA as far as taxes, that they will be paying, so that taxes will be paid to the village at the rate that they're being paid now instead of going down to zero. So I'll keep track with Kevin on that. Attended a parking committee meeting. Some recommendations I see is on the agenda for tonight. The town hall meeting that we had on the bluff, it was very well attended. Although I wasn't able to comment, I look forward to having the opportunity to discuss with the whole board what's the best way to go as far as the bluff. Attended a sign meeting that Dave and Planning and Building Department head Andy Freeling conducted. I was hoping that more business owners would have been here, but I think it was a good start. Maybe we can do something in the future. I don't know if there's a problem getting the word out or just a wrong time of year or whatever, but maybe we can do something again for that, just to let the businesses know about the sign code. Went to a St. Charles breakfast meeting. They held for local officials. They provided an update on the status of the emergency room expansion, and I was glad to hear that they were singing the praises of the building department, and they were saying that they were commending the building department and cooperation between all the parties involved. So, but that was always good to hear. Had a fireworks coordination meeting. All the departments were there, EMT, Crucial Fireworks. To remind anybody that's listening is that the fireworks will be on July 3rd at East and West Beach. And proof of residency will be required if you wish to park in the areas.
And we're having two fun things this year, right? In addition to the fireworks, leading up to the fireworks, we're going to have a food truck and a DJ.
Right, that's right.
So, and a dance floor.
The world.
We had a whaleboat meeting. LISAC held a whaleboat meeting, and they reported that they were awarded a grant from the Gardner Foundation, which will allow them to the funds that needed to complete the whaleboat build. So that should be done spring of next year. That they anticipate the whaleboat to be completed. And just piggybacking on what Rebecca reported before, there was a tree devining meeting, and we discussed the importance of removing English ivy from the bases of trees to prevent damage to the trees and the possibility of the trees being blown over in heavy winds. A representative from the Three Village Community Trust was in attendance and discussed their awareness program and just gave us a couple of tips of how we should proceed. And that's my report.
You know, one of those tips was to start working with landscapers in
Yes.
their annual notices, where they send out annual notices to, it's time that, you know, book your appointment for trimming your hedges, or book your appointment for this or that, and add the divining as one of the reminders,
Also,
which could
during,
be
during the winter
a
hours,
game changer.
during the winter
Yeah.
months, it would be
when they're not as busy.
not as busy.
So that, to me, sounds like a winner for awareness.
I was inspired from that meeting and went out and cut some vines. So be careful when you cut the vine, which is always
It does, yeah, the poison ivy hides in the vines, doesn't it? Oh, well, turn your mic on. It's a prerequisite.
At the Recreation Council meeting, we discussed the overload of stored kayaks and vessels. Dave told us that he's got about 12 vessels up there that have been stored for 3 or 4 years. If we can track who owns those vessels, we'd like to send out one final notice and perhaps hold an auction. Give it a
We've discussed that one before, right? I would just say, as the council should make a formal recommendation in that regard, and I think we have to resolve that and hire an auctioneer. Or put it up on, are you an auctioneer?
Dave,
The way generally is there's services out there that do it. They take a little bit of percentage for the advertising, the listing in the proper agencies where this material, whatever it's going to be, whatever you want, whether it's cars, boats.
Right.
They find the right spots to advertise and they will sell.
Okay. So maybe for the June 26th, Stan, they can write a formal recommendation on that's what I would like to see happen. But then your office, Sylvia, would do that one final review of the permits and see if anybody wants to come and claim their kayaks. Or maybe we just put them in the kayak containers because they're not filled up yet, right? Are the kayaks? They're not all booked up yet, right? So we put them up there and say free kayaks for use. How about that? No.
Certainly make it an amenity to the village. It's safe. Yeah, they sign a waiver and say first come, first served. These are village kayaks. We don't mistake it.
Not the best either. All right.
Sure. Okay, building and planning, this will be quick. They had approximately 15 new building permit and planning applications received in the last 30 days and approximately 50 foils. I think the biggest thing to come out was there was a rental code committee meeting last night, and they are preparing their final memo to be forwarded to the village attorney. And this covers long-term rentals, short-term rentals, accessory apartments, and B&Bs. And when the memo is forwarded to the village attorney, it will be likewise forwarded to us, the trustees and the mayor. Also, they're up at the building department, there is a planning board meeting tomorrow night. That's usually held up on North Country Road at the building department. Few things on there that have been pending, a couple of new things, nothing, I don't think that really warrants any in-depth public discussion here yet. The other thing, there's the proposed outdoor dining code amendment that's proposed, that's pending draft amendments that will be referred to the village attorney. The parking committee is ongoing with its work. And last and not least, and I think this is important, economic development is putting together a information package to be distributed about the village and development in our village.
You know, just a little more detail on that is speaking with Andy Freeling about pulling together a presentation filled with data about the village, which doesn't currently exist, using information from the ferry company, from the train. Residents, traffic. I think there's a perception that Port Jefferson doesn't have the foot traffic that would warrant coming and bringing a business into the village, but if that's true, my eyes are deceiving me because the village is packed every single weekend and many, many nights during the week. So we just need to put it together and make it a traveling, sort of a road show where there are opportunities to showcase the village, why it's good to do business here, and that we are open and interested in speaking to prospects. So while that doesn't exist currently, I'm sure it will be built upon after, we'll put a working structure together and then it can continue to be added on with other information as we come across it. My report, I took a lot of the meetings with Bob, so he covered some of the issues, including the wellboat grant coming to fruition from the Gardner Foundation, which was great news for them because their fundraising in that, from that end is concluded. It will cover the cost of a trailer, the cost of a cover, and a canvas cover, and the cost of the remaining material that it's going to take to finish the boat. The next step for the wellboat is to figure out where we can house it. They want to build a shed, and that was part of the discussion from the beginning. We as a board will have to start talking about locating where the shed can be located, and I'd be happy to take recommendations. We have talked about the location next to the Parks shed on Rosner Lane, on the corner of Rosner Lane and Barnum, so that it would be situated parallel to Rosner Lane, 20 by 30 and 20 feet by 30 feet, large, wide, whatever. And it's just a basic shed, so that they can keep the boat in. Because if they keep the boat in the natural environment and in weather, it will destroy the boat and it will not be seaworthy. And the goal is to keep the boat seaworthy. So
I want to note on that location, that's come up a lot in discussion about sort of the lowest areas of the village and being a potential location to actually kind of route stormwater, because it does have a bit of a dip there. So that's something, there's conversations about that being looked at as part of our infrastructure. So I think both because of that and also because it's so low lying, I don't know, building something on there, it could create a problem in a sense. So just
yeah.
with that information.
Engineers and architects would be involved, and it's a boat.
Well, I mean, I'm not worried about the shed.
I'm kidding.
But also just the potential of, that area to remain.
No, you make a good point. But we are looking for opportunities where to put it so it's in close proximity to the Drowned Meadow Cottage Museum. And they want to use it potentially for educational purposes, bringing classroom trips to that facility to go from Drowned Meadow to the whaleboat and talk about its significance and history.
I know there had been talking about sort of some of the grassy space next to the museum.
20 by 30.
Yeah.
Space.
Yeah. So I raised it with the town of Brookhaven to see if there's any space across the street from Village Hall that might be optimal. I just have to get back to them with specs and see if we can't work out something with the town. To have it right on the side of the launch where the marina would be great, because they do want to put that boat in the water. They want to travel with it, they want to take it to parades and do all kinds of things with it. So the discussion is ongoing, and I think we have on the Making a Difference webpage, we have Whaleboat Build Steering Committee, which might now come into play. So if people are interested in volunteering to become part of this discussion for where the permanent residence of the whaleboat goes, I think that would be a great opportunity for people to get involved that way. So I had a visit to the Tooker House last week, first time in there, and was accompanied by legislator Englebright And he brought two experts with him to take a look at the house and to see, to evaluate it, to see what its, if the authenticity of its origins actually can be verified back to the early 1700s. And on that cursory review, it looks like it can be. A person by the name of Kevin Durkin, who is a restoration expert and has restored hundreds of homes across the United States and in Europe, and also worked as a part of a crew that did the work as part of the Magnolia Network's operations, TV shows, This Old House kind of thing. He's one of the people who restored the homes in those programs. So he came and looked at the house at the invite of Steve Engelbright, which was very cool. And he had his crowbar along with him, and he was tapping on the plaster, picking up the bricks, saying, "This is definitely a handmade brick." It was amazing to watch him at work. So took a look at the house. I've been talking to Steve Engelbright about what the next steps are for how we move this forward, and with these experts and with the funding. We're probably going to vote on the expenditure to buy the house in the June 26th. I don't know if it's in these resolutions, but I can't remember if it is. But we need to cut that check so we can buy the house, so we actually own it and can get a survey and can start the process of fulfilling the grant and fulfilling the potential of the historic location. If anybody wants to tour that house, just all you need to do is ask, okay? It's open for view. I don't think you need to bring a mask,
Inappropriate clothing.
a nose clothing, and appropriate clothing. It's pretty moldy. If that was the only thing, it's filled with, like, people were living there. Yeah, so, but you could just sort of feel how old it was with the beehive oven and fireplace and all that. It is just fascinating. So we are working to finalize the MOU with the Conservancy. So Bob, I know you wrote me a note on that today. I don't know if you want to take a look at where that is. Have you seen that?
I
MOU?
have the proposed one, but
Okay.
anything's been marked up in that.
It's marked up, and then we have to get it to you, Dave, for final, so I'll get that to you this week. But I still haven't really sat down and really dug into it as it has been revised.
Mhm.
So I just want to take one final look at it. The beach box project going up East Beach Road, I don't know if anybody has been down that road lately, but we're, I think, 75 to 80% of the way cleared of all the shrubbery and overgrowth that has festooned there over the past, I don't know how many years. Those have been up there. I talked to Mike Laruto, I saw him today, I talked to him about them, because he's the one who built that project.
Back in the 90s. they built it up.
So we are that much closer to having there are a couple of example boxes that are set up, and we're taking Rebecca, the Conservation Advisory Council's input to heart and looking at, there is irrigation there that is being restored or fixed, or it just turned on in the first place, because I don't know if it was ever actually utilized. But we do have some irrigation there, so our irrigation expert, Pat Sullivan's taking a look at that. And so we'll have 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 different sample boxes by the 4th of July, that when people are going up and down Beach Road, they'll be able to take a look at what's possible and make a decision if they want to get involved or if not. So that's where we stand. Got to work with the Conservancy on getting that project in writing, and I don't know if we need to have a resolution about that, but I think it's just a Conservancy project. So
Is there a plant list finalized for these boxes?
there's been a plant list proposed, we're having another expert look at it and taking the CAC's advice, like I said, taking the advice to heart to make sure that, I'm told dark green leafy plants are the ones that are deer resistant. Some of the plantings that went in there recently have been picked apart by the deer, some have not. So some have been picked apart by people walking by saying, I like that plant, maybe they'll take it. True story.
I've seen it happen. Not here, but in other places.
Yes, well,
People pick flowers, public flowers.
with the root system and all. Was that you, Bob?
No.
All right, so anyway, it's progressing, and going to ask our graphic designer friend to kind of put together a nice sign that talks about what we're doing and why we're doing it, and inviting residents to get involved. We're setting up a meeting with EMS, the fire department, and code enforcement to have just a roundtable conversation about how they work together. They're often in the field at the same time in the same place. And so just to sort of get a acknowledgement and awareness and start a dialogue between them to see how best they can work together and efficiently, and what the fire department needs, doesn't need from code enforcement at a scene, and what EMS needs and doesn't need from code enforcement at a particular scene. So that's being set up. The town hall that we held on the Bluff project, so we could get resident feedback, is now on the village YouTube channel. Our next steps with that are, we are meeting with the engineering firm and the construction company next week of the existing phase 1 project to talk through how we can start repairing that. And we are, out of that meeting, the goal is to really, and I don't even know if it's coming out of that meeting, I'm just grappling with, and I would like to hear from you all about what you think next steps should be for us with that bluff, where that bluff is concerned. Do we take new proposals? Do we get a peer review analysis of the existing proposal for phase 2? And there are engineering firms that will not second guess the design right now out of respect for their colleagues. So that's a thing. I'm sure we could find an engineering firm that would take shots at a design for a little bit of money. But I just would really enjoy hearing your reactions, your feedback from that town hall. As you know, it was not noticed, and so it wasn't an open meeting, but it really wasn't set up to be an open meeting. It was really set up to hear what residents had to say, not, I mean, this is where we can talk about where we want to go forward. So I'm asking you all what you thought about that, and if you have any insights, feedback, thoughts, ideas, deliberations, opinions, you're allowed to talk about them now.
One takeaway that I think we all heard is that everybody that spoke kept on saying they wanted some sort of vote or something, some sort of public referendum.
Correct.
So we have to keep that in mind. I would love to see what, if there would be a company willing to do a peer review, just to see what they think about what proposal we're going to put, if anything, for a referendum. I would love to.
You mean in terms of, you think if we get a second opinion for a design or something like
Yeah,
that?
and it might not even be, maybe you look at it as, we have this problem, how do we move forward? What went wrong and how do we fix it? So that maybe if it's not couched as, what did they do wrong?
Right.
Rather, how do we fix this problem we have before we lose more bluff or even potentially create a safety problem with the building that's on top. And maybe that will cause someone to want to take a look at it.
And phase two, phase one is done. Phase one, as we do need to repair phase one, at least fix, reattach a Band-Aid, whatever it is, it needs to be corrected. Phase two is where I'm kind of like wondering, how do we go forward? Is the plan good? Is the plan right? Is the plan going to work? Are there things missing from that plan? Is there a drainage design that wasn't included in that plan that we can look at, and maybe that'll have a long-lasting effect to address the watershed on that side of Fairway Drive?
Well, I don't know if this is public or exec session discussion as far as just the status of the legality or the sort of who's responsible for the failure of phase one. For me, yes, we need to be talking about phase two or strategic retreat or whatever is going to happen next in addition to phase one, but I don't know.
What is a strategic retreat exactly? Because I hear that terminology utilized a lot, and I think it has a lot of different meanings.
Sure.
So how do you mean strategic retreat?
So strategic retreat essentially acknowledges that whether it's in 6 months or 5 years or 20 years, that we're going to continue losing footage of the bluff because we are a pile of sand. This is Long Island. It's just the geology of this. We can spend a lot of money. We can spend millions of dollars to slow that process, which is what the course that the village took to build that lower wall. But inevitably, when you speak to geologists, they're like, inevitably we will continue losing that bluff. That's just the natural course of things. So I think the question for the public, and as far as the referendum goes, is what is the value of the amount of time that you want to buy for this building on top of the bluff, which is up to every resident. I respect any resident who says, yes, I do feel like my taxpayer dollars, I would support my taxpayer dollars, my taxes going up and spending money on buying more time for that building and the upland. And then some taxpayers would say, no, I don't think that's a good use of my taxpayer dollars, and would vote against that. So that's where I think the question comes down to, is we're buying time. Strategic retreat essentially says we acknowledge that we're going to have to pull back from that cliff sooner than later because the cliff is coming towards the building. I think right now there's a lot of the safety is precarious even already. With the deck there, the gazebo already had to go because the gazebo is floating out over the edge. So strategic retreat might look like taking down parts of the building, the northernmost parts of the building, because over time, as we've discussed, the building was expanded upon towards the cliff. And so is it starting to take away some of the building? Is it saying, looking at our contracts and how much money is coming in from the building and what use the building is in the village, and saying at some point in time and putting a timeline on it, we will take down the building, but maybe in the meantime we're rebuilding, say, building the structure where the turn and the pro shop is, building upon that to create the facilities that the village wants to maintain as part of that campus on the building that's much further away from the cliff's edge. So essentially strategic retreat is just saying we acknowledge that we're going to have to move away from the edge. What does that look like? Where are we going to rebuild, and what are we going to rebuild? It sounds very defeatist in a way. I think the human bend is to say we can do this, we can stop this. I've just seen case study after case study of municipalities that pour millions and millions of dollars into trying to stop a geological phenomenon, and inevitably they slow it, but it slips away anyway. So for me, I think having that long-term vision and being able to have discussions and saying, all right, village residents, how much money do you want to spend on buying time? And then also at the same time, let's look at the timeline of what the campus is going to look like in the next 5, 10, 20 years.
And that's where we are right now.
Yeah.
Thank you for lining, thank you for describing all of that, but yeah, that's where we are.
Yeah.
So, our next steps in terms of, we have a contract with the vendor TPG through 2029. And I'm sure they have contracts with their customers, clientele, through 2029. So I like the idea of being strategic and figuring out what comes next for the clubhouse and a restaurant and what's needed, all of that. In the meantime, we have a little bit of time to play with those ideas, consider those ideas, not play with them, but consider them. What about phase 2? What about the upland? What about, and we have some people who have volunteered to participate in the steering committee for the north side of Fairway Drive, which is going to be a very important conversation and series of conversations. A lot of people miss tennis. They want to see tennis come back. The question is that steel wall something that we need to do? Do we need to spend 4.2 million or 4.8 million, whatever's left in the budget? Michelle, do we know? I think it's 4.8. It's not even, it's banned, right? It's banned finances. Do we need to spend that kind of money? And if we do, I'm in complete agreement that the residents should have a say in whether or not they should. I think, do we all agree on that? I mean, we're not voting on it, but
Well, I think before we even get to that point, I think that it's important to do, as we said, a peer review to say, have somebody look at, this is the proposal that is being presented to us. Is it a viable solution?
anything we do will cost money.
Yeah, sure.
So we're taking money from money that is
Mhm.
booked for this project. So if we do a peer review, we're gonna need to spend money to pay for it. If we don't do a referendum now to say, what does a referendum look like? We wanna vote before, I didn't see the petition that was going around. Never saw it, never came in front of my desk or my face, but I don't know what the petition says, but if the petition says we want a referendum, that's great. What are we referenduming?
Exactly.
What is it, what's it for?
Yeah,
What do we decide?
We have to.
Right, we're deciding that we're not gonna spend another dime until the residents say you can spend a dime.
I think with the, what we've discussed in the past is a referendum, I remember this like 2 years ago, a referendum would be for, because you can't unspend the money that's already been spent, but whether it's, we'd essentially draw a line, somewhere and say if we've already spent, what, 6 million?
6.2.
6.2?
You can return the money that you haven't spent.
That we haven't.
Right.
You don't need to bond it.
Right.
Right,
That's
so-
big.
Essentially, I think what the board would do is pass a resolution that amends the resolution from 2021, was it? Bonding, approving a bond of $10 million, reducing it to 6.2, 6.5, whatever the board wants to set it at, and then would have to have a referendum to then spend, to say, okay, here's the discussion, all right, does the village want to, approve bonding, $4 million, whatever the figure then
It would
is.
wind up, the full amount would wind up going into a bond.
Yeah.
You're a rookie, Michelle.
I am a rookie. The full amount would wind up going into a bond if we did continue to spend that money.
Right.
Right now, we're only at the 6.2. You can go ahead and instead of bonding the whole 10 million, pay that 4 million, whatever we have, what do we say? 6 point, hello, I work.
4.8.
4.8.
4.8.
Wait.
We can pay that back,
No.
send that back.
3.8.
3.8,
Yeah.
yeah.
We-
That's
3.8.
I like 3.8. We can, send that back, so, then we don't have as much of a debt to pay out each year.
So if I'm understanding, so we've taken, so that 3.8 is sitting in a bank account somewhere?
Yeah, we took a $10 million bond.
It's
Not
bond
bad.
anticipation.
Bond,
No,
no,
it's-
Anticipation,
sorry,
no.
So it's sitting there waiting for us to actually
bond.
do the
And
bonding.
we're paying interest
Yes.
on that money that's just sitting there.
We're earning interest, but
Oh, it's sitting in an account that's earning interest,
yes.
but we're paying interest to the.
To the bank, bond,
To the bond.
the bond,
Okay,
the loan that we took out.
got it.
So the final amount of interest, I think, is like didn't he say $1.5 million? That's how much
For-
interest
For
we're
the
getting.
life of the,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So, can I ask you?
Sure.
Your reaction to that, what trustee Cassay just said?
I think that, I agree that if you're going to do some type of referendum, you should know what you're referring to, right? The decision needs to get made, and I agree what the future of that's going to look like, right? That needs to be your first step. And I think a detailed analysis needs to occur financially. What does this village look like without that amenity also? And the consequences of relating to even the cleanest of retreats that might have a dramatic fiscal impact down the road as it affects the income generated from that building.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be a balance of that. But I think you need the necessary first steps, which is exactly what the board is doing. Hearing from the public, decide, they elected you guys to make those decisions, right? Hear what they have to say, come up with the plan, make sure you're from your fiduciary perspective, you're doing the most prudent thing with the money. But I think the first, if it goes to referendum, right, that referendum needs to say what it's going to be, right?
Yeah.
We're not voting to wait just to vote to wait again.
I think a referendum 2 years ago would have looked different than what we're talking about now, because I think people are talking about back then was, do we even want to do this?
Right.
There was, talk about let nature take its course. Okay, now we're 10 steps ahead. And I think we need to get a clearer picture, yes, of what the public wants to vote on. Because I'm not clear anymore.
And weigh that against the impact
Correct.
to the community if that decision is to let nature take its course. That course can happen next year in 2 bad storms. And what does that look like 4 years from now without that revenue being generated from the asset, which could be dramatic in a village that has a modest budget.
So with the 3.8, so the revenue is approximately $300,000 from.
Correct.
It's like, it's a little bit less, right?
That's the rent,
That's the rent.
300 this year.
So for the entire $10 million, it would take 33 years to balance out that rent being paid, to add up to the expenditure. So, because I was looking to see, like, what are we putting out in order to save what? So hold on, let me just finish my math. So with the $10 million by $300,000, that's 33 years that it would take to just break even as far as taxpayers have spent money on this wall, and then that's the revenue coming back to offset taxes. If we're just looking forward, the 3.8 million that we're looking at potentially spending additionally for the Upland campus, maybe it has to be more in the end, because we're acknowledging how costly all of this is. That by $300,000 a year would be 12 and a half years for a payback, or to kind of break even. So, and again, just
Don't forget, if we execute that plan as it is, phase 2, there's 75% of that fee will be coming in reimbursement from FEMA.
Sure. But we just seeing how things add up, that's really good, to offset that. But just seeing how all these costs of the engineer comes in and does this, and there's a drone thing, and then there's value. I could see us, getting close to 3.8 mil, even with our 25% match. And because we also we don't have a fresh bid on what phase two would look like, right? Like, even with the plan in hand, prices have gone up every month, really, and the last bid we got was in 2022. So we don't even know 75% of what, you know, we're looking at. Yeah, I just wanted to look at the payback, the return on investment.
Right, but you can't do the 10 million because money's already been spent for the first phase.
Sure, so then.
So that money we're not gonna get back, I mean, that money we're
No.
already obligated to pay.
Right. So then the return on investment, if we max out at the 10 mil, we're still, you know, spend up to
That's
the
what
10
I'm
mil.
saying,
That's 12 and a half years
Mhm.
that it would take to see any kind of return on investment.
So my question really, Dave, was, there's 3.8 sitting out there, and earning interest for us? Yeah. So do we have a referendum to return that money? Or do we just let the money sit, let it earn interest, come up with what we are referring in the referendum, so that if there is a vote to say, yes, we want to do this project, we don't want to put a steel wall in the bluff, but we do want to use this new technology that holds the plants together and then we want to create a drainage system that will move the water aside, and we end up coming up with a plan that costs a lot less. Then we have the money there, we can return what we don't have to use, and then people can vote on that.
And correct me if I'm wrong, a referendum, there's a limited number of things a referendum can be brought out on, so it wouldn't be sort of a description of a project, but rather the proposal it would have to be binary in the sense that the village, having listened to our residents, come up with, this seems like the most viable option based on village input, resident input. Do you want to spend?
Yes or no?
Yes.
Right.
Spend the money on this or not? It's not like right.
Right, but, yeah, exactly, it's all,
The thing I-
$1.1 million
Right.
has been budgeted has been designed for this project. Yes or no? Yes?
right, right.
Yeah.
Again, I think also you would need to look to see, obviously that money wasn't free, right? So what is the balance of what that money's generating for us at the moment as opposed to what it's costing us to have it, right?
Mhm.
That should be a net, something, either negative or positive.
Mhm.
And what happens if Mother Nature takes its course, and certainly someone much smarter than me would have to, determine if that asset, if that building falls into the sound or down the hill, right? What's next? Where does that spread go? How does the earth follow? And does part of that cost you your golf course as well? And now you're talking at a much more substantial number in revenue that maybe not in our lifetimes, but certainly in the lifetime of the village could be very dramatic if you lose all of that revenue generated for what's on the top of that.
Yeah,
Yep.
it'll end up costing taxpayers higher levy anyway.
Well, I mean, I don't know,
I'd like to
I can't-
throw-
oh,
I'd like to throw some things in here.
We were waiting for you to.
About 3 years ago, I was asked to come up with Plan A and Plan B. Plan A is what we've done. We put a wall in. I agreed with spending the money for that wall because of the beach situation. Plan B was to come up with prices for demolition of a building and the building of a new structure across the road. We got the price on the destruction of the building from the previous village administrator. We were into the designs portion of the new building across the road, and I was pulled off the project. My thoughts are still, even though we get $300,000 a year in rent, they make a lot more money than $300,000 with their catering business up there. And I know that the previous administration didn't want to be in the restaurant business. But if we had a clubhouse across the road and the footprint was drawn, it was a 2-story footprint. It was a beautiful looking footprint. It had deck overlooking Long Island Sound. It had a deck overlooking the golf course. There would be a restaurant upstairs that would be village owned, of course, but the village would hire someone along the lines of a Dennis Manarino to run the establishment, make a lot more money than the income that we're getting at the present time. Also figure in the $240,000 or so that the membership pays in minimums. That in turn would come to the village. It would not go to the tenant that's in the building at the present time, although I know that's not all profit. However, I've done a lot of skiing, and I know what happens to a ski slope when you ski across the slope. I'm not an engineer, but it just seems to me that if we put a steel wall 40 feet in the ground across that bluff, it seems to me we're putting a slice in a piece of pie. We've all seen the glaciers, how they fall away. I don't know. The referendum, I think to vote on something, we have to have something to vote on.
Correct.
There has to be something on, there has to be an alternative. I firmly believe that the village is losing money at the present time, even though you're getting $300,000 a year. Our present general manager up there is quite familiar with the kind of money that they're making. And it's quite a bit beyond what we're getting in return. My thoughts.
What do you mean we're losing money?
If that establishment were our establishment and it was being run by someone that we have hired, an expert, I threw Dennis's name out there because at the time Dennis was interested in taking it over, but not as a leasee. He would be an employee of ours. He would run the restaurant. The money that was taken in on those catering events is village money and not TPG's money.
Recognize that also comes with the 70 employees to run it, and the French benefits and the retirement system, and that's a lot of money. It's not an 80 grand, 50, 60, 70, $80,000 salary with a fringe benefit package and a retirement is
70 is kind of an exaggeration. If you go up to the water view at any given time, you're lucky if you find 10 people up there working.
But admittedly, with tenants not doing well. So maybe it's not, even if it's 25 people, even if it's 20 people.
No, I know that.
That's millions of dollars in employee costs, and you don't have to run a restaurant. And when the bad wedding happens, the board doesn't get looked on because they have a bad establishment. There's a lot that goes along with not being in the restaurant business other than the money. Just thought.
Yeah, I think these are conversations that we have to have as pieces of the puzzle, but I'm relieved to see, I think what we're all on the same page about is that when the board does get to a point that there's a plan, that everyone seems committed to put that forth on, as in the legal form of a referendum to ask the village for their opinion on whether or not to move forward with that plan. And then, probably having sort of the plan B, which, should the referendum not pass, then this is what the alternative would look like. So really glad to hear that, the villagers will have a voice in this, because whatever we do or don't do, it has costs and consequences. As far as the wall, and then like how far is it going to keep going? I mean, yes, in the future, but is it the future of 30 years? Is it the future of 60 years? Is it before the sun turns black? Like, eventually we will all be underwater. I mean, if we want to really get grim.
Right.
Yeah. But
6 feet of dirt.
and 6 feet of dirt, yes. Yeah, well, and we'll be under 6 feet of dirt before the wall gets too far. But anyway.
All right.
All right, bringing it home.
Well,
Just to put a pin in it, I think there's a lot of very overwhelming infrastructural issues that will face our tiny village, our township, our county, our state, the world, as the weather continues to get more extreme, sea levels continue to rise. We're going to start facing, as far as strategic retreat goes, there's going to be properties eventually that will need to be condemned as their cliff sides get too close to homes, and then there's a huge tax implication to that. So there's, I've been in these conferences and talking to other municipalities and individuals about the daunting, like we don't want to sit around and talk about these things because there's no great answers. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. It's just how are we going to navigate this, and how can we get out ahead of it enough in a way that we're acknowledging that there's a lot of challenges and making the financial decisions, making the infrastructural decisions holistically. So I'm glad to continue, handing off the partners that I've been having these conversations with to help the village navigate not just this section of the bluff, but all of the issues that us as a harborfront village are going to be facing. It's my sunshine. Sorry, I'm usually really
yeah,
positive.
but you're leaving us.
Sorry, guys.
You're leaving us, Rebecca.
Yeah.
Flat lever.
I will never leave you. I'm going to be in this village. You know where I live,
Okay.
and I love to talk about this stuff. So
Yeah.
anytime. But no, it's really we have a lot to deal with, and I commend anyone who's willing to step up to the board and look to be in these conversations because they're not easy.
The recruitment we're doing through Making a Difference page is really paying off. We're going to be reaching out to residents who have volunteered for the Public Safety Advisory Council this week. Also, the steering committee for the Upland North Side of Fairway Drive. Also, the Erosion Commission, the Citizens Commission on Erosion. We've gotten a lot of volunteers that have raised their hands, put their name in on the chart, and we'll be following up with them, including our Board of Ethics. So, if there's no further discussion about that, I would like to. I think my next step here is to bring together the Citizens Commission with the volunteers who have raised their hand to participate in that, and anyone else. We're not going to limit the number on that. We're just going to allow it to just grow and grow. Set up another meeting up at the facility. We have a contract in place with TPG, and it's not going anywhere. And we are here to help them continue operating in step with that contract. That's the most important thing we have to do right now. With regard to next steps for planning for the project, again, I mentioned that we're meeting with our engineering firm, GEI, and Terry Contracting next week. If one trustee wants to attend that meeting with me, you guys decide amongst yourselves who wants to be that trustee. I'm inclined to suggest Bob because it is parks and public works that the bluff involves, and that was why I originally thought Bob would be the right person for the town hall meeting, as he is the commissioner of parks and the commissioner of public works. So, but you all can work that out. I would tap you, but if somebody else wants to have a conversation with Bob and make a different decision, it's certainly up to you. I'm open to it. Whomever wants to attend is welcome to attend, just as long as it's one trustee. So I think that meeting is June 20th. It's a Thursday.
Yeah.
So from there, I will continue speaking with people in the community. I have a connection to a person who had a job done out in Belterre that is a successful project, a fraction of cost. And I'll explore that. I'm going to go into Oldfield. I've been invited to go into Oldfield to take a look with the mayor of Oldfield at some projects that they've been working on. And in the meantime, there are contractors that are kind of stepping up and saying, we'd like to get involved. There are technology companies that want to get involved. So at some point, we can come back to another town hall and maybe present some of these ideas. So I think that's how the plan is formulating in my head. If you all have a different idea, can't get to what you're talking about yet, Stan, because we have a contract to fulfill and honor. And to disrupt their business would be a breach of contract there. So,
Dave, let me just ask a question. Let's say we have a major storm, we have a major, 3 major hurricanes, and it affects the building, and the building is not habitable anymore. How does that affect our contract?
I'm sure, and having not read it today, but I did review it. I believe there is it just became popular during the pandemic, but a force majeure clause through acts of God that make the contract unenforceable on both parties.
I'm wondering how it's going to affect the TPG when we bring in the machinery to put the wall in. How is that going to affect? I know for a fact that last week they lost a tenant because of the tennis court situation. They lost a contract for an affair. Now, when we bring in these huge cranes, what's going to happen then?
well, they brought a few huge cranes in last week to replace take the air conditioning units off and replace them. So
They're babies compared to the two that you're going to see putting those walls in.
we have a good relationship with the contract, with the vendor. So this
Your
would be a
responsibility
surprise.
to maintain the bluff on a federally funded project trumps the contract.
But we also talk to them, and we don't
It
surprise
happens,
them.
right? I got married on the bluff in Montauk during the middle of construction of the lighthouse. So instead of having a big, beautiful lighthouse in the background, I had all the beautiful scaffolding.
Excuse me. That's good reduction.
I did, but I'm a good negotiator.
Well, and that's a question that I would have, and how, if we changed the upland project, so say we submitted for a federal grant for a steel wall, these specs, etc., and then we say, you know what, we'd really rather have 75% coverage for this drainage plan, this, that, or the other, do we lose the federal funding?
That's a conversation too.
Yeah.
I've thought about that too.
So,
How do we, but we have to get there first.
no, sure,
I know.
I'm just throwing more questions.
And fulfill the things that they're asking us for right now.
Mhm.
So we're moving forward with that. Yeah, that's a good question. One other update is that we are looking to, as the village, work with the Chase Building landlord to see if we can't create an arrangement by which residents that live in the Chandler Square area will park in the Chase parking lot after business hours. So they have access to that parking lot after business hours. So we've had 2 discussions so far, looking to meet with the Chase Bank management and also the Chandler Square to see if we can't make some arrangements that work to benefit everybody. So it's really crowded and nobody has anywhere to park, and so we're working on that. I think that's it in my report. Sylvia, do you want to step in and step up?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. I will have a minimum of 2 additional resolutions. They're both personnel related. One is to approve a payment of $19 per hour to Sherry Willie to be the weekend building manager at the Village Center. The other is for the hiring of a part-time seasonal planner in the building department per the recommendation of Andy Freeland. So you'll be seeing those two. In addition to that, I'm asking that we please vote this evening out of process on 4 hiring resolutions that were included in my report. The reason for this is that these are part-time seasonal employees at the country club. Their hire dates were May 30th, June 4th, June 6th. If we wait until the meeting at the end of the month, then these people potentially would not be paid for 6 or 7 weeks after their start date. So if we could vote on the resolutions that I included, the first one being resolution ratifying the rehiring of Joshua Joyner as a part-time seasonal laborer at the Port Jefferson Country Club at an hourly wage rate of $18 per hour effective June 4th, 2024.
Motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Resolution approving the hiring of Dennis Maud as a part-time seasonal laborer at the Port Jefferson Country Club at an hourly wage rate of $18 per hour, effective June 6, 2024.
Motion.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Resolution ratifying the rehiring of Stephen Bayer as a part-time seasonal laborer at the Port Jefferson Country Club at an hourly wage rate of $18.50 per hour, effective May 30th, 2024. Thank you.
Second,
Thank you.
Second.
all in favor?
Well, can I just ask a question? Why is one person 18 and one person 1850?
Good question.
Oh, it's rehiring.
It's rehiring.
Got it.
Time of experience.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Resolution
We
ratifying.
do. Aye,
I'm sorry.
Aye.
Yes, thank you. Resolution ratifying the hiring of Carolyn Wolf as a part-time seasonal inside pro shop staff employee at the Port Jefferson Country Club at an hourly wage rate of $17 per hour effective May 30th, 2024.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Oh, my God.
Aye.
I got it.
That's a rough one. All in favor? Thank you. Thank you. Moving on to my report on the section titled bids and RFPs. We have a wealth of RFPs that were approved from the last meeting. What I've done with my deputy is actually rate them in order of time sensitivity. So the next RFP that will be going out will be for the concessionaires, because that's important to this season. So we'll get working on that as soon as possible. Sticking with the RFPs, the Attorney Moran and Attorney Cicero created for us a contract for the roofing company, Graham, that won the bid. That contract was already returned, so I have the original and emailed version. I'll be in touch with them. That was returned today. I'll be in touch with them tomorrow. Work should begin very shortly, in the next few days. So that was very good news. Going on to the election section of my report, we hosted 2 village voter registration days. One was on Thursday the 6th, one was on Saturday the 8th. And of those, we had 3 residents register to vote. All of them were on Thursday. So my recommendation, and it's not unusual, many villages don't even host the registration days anymore. It's not unusual. My recommendation for next year is to not host the days. It's not economically feasible.
The question on that, can they come during office hours and do what they gotta do? Or is there specific?
Village law allows you 2 days, the opportunity for 2 days for people to come and register. It's not a haphazard. They can register to vote anytime they want in the proper sections of the proper area, whether it be the Board of Elections or wherever you would register to vote ordinarily. But for village registration day, the law says it's too specific. You can have up to 2 specific days.
And there was additional, like someone hired to create those days, or was it just because it was outside of office hours?
The election inspectors were here. We had 3 inspectors for each of those days. Not knowing what the turnout would be and wanting to be prepared. It's not a heavy lift money-wise, but it also was not fruitful.
Sure. Yeah, undoubtedly.
And people, if we don't have the registration, they, are registered at the Suffolk County Board of Elections, and then they can vote here, so.
There's all kinds of mechanisms in the election law to allow, if I move into the village 30 days prior to the election and I can prove that I'm a citizen, the village clerk will make that determination whether or not
Right.
they're allowed to vote, and each candidate will have their right to challenge that determination if in fact it comes to a one vote margin. But there's other means to accomplish the desire of someone to participate in government and our democracy, other than just registering to vote by that way. You could always run to court day of, get an affidavit. There's a host of things you can do.
And can I just clarify, this is specifically for people who are registered somewhere else but own property in the village and want to, and there's that village law that gives them the right to vote in the village election despite being registered permanently somewhere else?
I think where I think we might disagree, and maybe it's just the terms, is not own property. You have to prove that you reside there for a period of time. I am no expert in registration day. I can tell you how it worked in other municipalities where I worked. That those municipalities were more transient, so they were more summer residents who were in the village during the summer. So they were registered to vote where they live. They come on registration day, and notoriously the way it worked in that municipality is we would have anywhere between 300 and 500 people on registration day, because that was that many transient residents. So they would come, register to vote, and fill out an absentee ballot at the same time,
And then hand it right back.
and then hand it right back.
Right.
The legal debate on that process is not for us, but that's how it works in principle, and it had to do with residency other than owning property.
Got it. So Port Jeff being less of a beach community, summer
Transient.
community, yeah, maybe this is.
Makes sense,
Yeah.
that only 3 people show up.
Sure. Well, interesting exercise.
Absolutely. Lastly, I just wanted to report on the status of the JCAP grant that we have here for the courtroom. We are full speed ahead. We have paint and carpeting and drapes and filials and shades picked out, and we are.
You knew that
reporting-
Yeah.
Yeah, see? And we are researching new flagpoles as well.
Thank
And
you.
you're welcome. And whether we can use black, or if we're mandated in court to use something that is not black. So we will, the flagpole?
Really?
It's wood.
Yeah, we have to, we're taking an extra
Wow.
step.
About the
Okay.
wood.
We're taking an extra step to make sure that, of course, the matching, and we've seen them online, is black. We want to make sure that that's appropriate in the courtroom.
Okay.
So we're just doing that extra step. This should, we hope, be completed by the end of July. It should all be completed. And we're making arrangements with code and with other divisions for working around the work. That concludes my report. Any questions?
You just reminded me, we're having quarterly meetings with the not-for-profit
Yes.
partners in the village.
Yes.
And the not-for-profit partner meeting, which is scheduled for July 14, something, it conflicts, we wanted to have it up here, but it conflicts with
Yes.
the work that's being done. And so we're going to have it in a different location. It could end up being 17 people or so. First meeting was packed, second meeting wasn't as packed, but I think the third meeting is going to be kind of packed. So we're looking for another location to have the meeting, but again, another request for a trustee, whoever would be interested in attending that meeting. But it will be just one, and it'll be one of two other new trustees, so to work on it, whoever becomes sort of that not-for-profit sort of liaison to the community relations sort of initiatives.
And when is that again?
I have to check, but I'm thinking it's July 14th or 17th. So you have board discussion reminders here. Did you want to go through those?
Unless you would like me the deputy treasurer to do her report and then.
She's on, sitting on the edge of her seat to
She
do
is.
that.
She is.
I'm nervous.
All right, Michelle,
nervous.
all right,
Let's-
all right,
let her go.
let's ease up
Go
that
ahead.
Give you
nervousness.
the golden buzzer.
Except that you guys touched on a lot of stuff that I was going to touch on. The first thing is resolution to be requested to amend general fund and Port Jefferson Country Club budgets to correct fiscal year 2024 over budgeted accounts. This is an ongoing analysis and can continue until July. So we've opened fiscal year 2025. We are still continuing to work in 2024. Obviously, we're not looking to go over budget, the proposed budget, just move within the lines to cover items that are over.
Okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
And there will likely be other amendments and modifications until July.
Okay.
Okay. So I already told you that the fiscal year is open. There were some discrepancies that we had come across in fund balance. I have the pleasure of telling this. In the three major funds, general fund, capital, and country club. This was due to auditing adjustments made in prior fiscal years related to encumbrances and fund balance. The software was not set up correctly as far as where encumbrances and reserve encumbrances on the balance sheet went, which caused the fund balance to not be realistic. This resulted in decrease in fund balances of $389,583 in general fund, $296,297 in the country club, and $228,135 in the capital fund. We did come to a solution, worked with Edmonds, encumbrances are set up correctly now, and will not be a problem going forward.
So what does that do to our bottom line?
The bottom line, fund balance as of 6/5, general fund is $1,392,761. Country club is negative $385,346, and capital is negative $2,610,342.
2,000,000.
610,342.
And that's due to, that, so that $2.6 million number, and that's due to non-reimbursed grants, correct? But also that extra, I didn't write the number down, for the capital, 289, 28.
228,135. So what was happening was encumbrances were carrying over each year that shouldn't have been. The system was not clearing them out, the auditors were not adjusting them, and the system was not getting rid of them. So
How
those
many-
encumbrances.
How many years was this about?
Edmonds, it started since Edmonds took over, which was about 2020.
So you're telling me that the auditors that we hired and paid money to look at exactly these things didn't catch it? And what is their liability in this?
I'm not gonna answer that question. In the vacuum, I didn't see exactly and understand a little deeper that comment.
Sure. Just throwing it out there and hoping for an answer sooner than later, because that's, I don't think anyone who hires someone to do a job and then gets such a subpar, and it's not even, they didn't do their job. Right.
I'll speak to the treasurer and get more details.
Appreciate it, thank you.
There was an additional Edmonds software error relating to the fund balance. We had a tax sale in 2021 for all outstanding taxes prior to fiscal year 2021. The village is made whole when you do the tax sale. That money should go into fund balance. It was not going into fund balance, it was going to revenue. And then, when the taxpayer came in, the lien was against, and they made their taxes, now that also went to revenue. It was being doubled,
It double booked.
right?
Who was doing that?
It was a
Software
software,
error problem,
yes.
but the auditors did not see that.
So it was paid out correctly, when it got paid out to the lien holder, it was paid out correctly, but when they brought it in, they brought it in as revenue, and it should have went in fund balance, and then should get paid out of fund
Right.
balance. So it was brought in as revenue, so that caused
What,
a difference in our
what's the
fund
bottom line on
balance.
that one?
That was 115,627.
So is that also, did that come out of the general fund? Is that we have to make it whole by taking it out of general fund?
Well, yes, we have to make it whole by taking out general fund, so that 1,392,000, that's already.
Reflects that.
Okay.
Okay.
What other good news you have, Michelle?
That's why Steven's not here today.
I think
We're rolling and fall into the sea, so it's.
The sun's gonna be laughing. 6 feet up.
Sure, I'm the one who has to get reappointed next month.
You're doing a good job.
This had been touched on, capital assets. Capital assets, a purchase order was created and a contract's being finalized because we haven't had anything
Mm-hmm,
doing our capital assets.
mm-hmm.
The capital audit is deep, they're deep into their dive. We expect that the report to be finished within a month. So.
We're looking forward to that meeting.
Yes,
Who's doing the audit?
PCAT. Michelle called today, actually. So,
Oh, really?
yeah,
And,
she was looking for Steven.
Yeah.
and he was there,
okay,
so.
all right.
The roofs were already touched on. Rocket Ship Park sidewalks. Plan is to use ARPA funds for this project.
Yes.
RFP was created and will be vetted once all responses are received. And the village is also drafting an RFP for yearly independent aquatic services.
You think we need it?
What's the closing date of the RFP? What's the opening date of the bid for the sidewalks?
We don't have one yet.
Oh, okay. We haven't published it yet.
That's correct.
Okay.
There was the third Finance and Budget Committee meeting. Discussion was room rentals, frameworks in place. They're looking at 3 tiers being discussed, 1 resident, 1 being non-resident, and another being New Village Park. They want to structure room rates based on square footage and amenities and ensure residents are receiving appropriate benefit. I can't discuss too much more to that because Stephen is the one who sends it. We discussed offer for the roofs, the skating rink cooling system, and sidewalks. Is what they're looking to
Mm-hmm.
use the funds for.
Mm-hmm.
The 2025 budget was set for New York State CHIPS, Consolidated Highway Improvement. Once approved projects are completed, the village can submit for reimbursement. We received CDBG grant monies from the town for downtown revitalization, Harborfront Park. Contract with county should be sent back soon and reimbursement process can begin.
Okay.
the Empire State Development Grant for Station Street. We need more backup paperwork, but the contract is to comply with MWBE regulations tied to the grant. This is in process. FEMA recharge basin. Village has submitted a minor scope change to dishes and requested an extension through August 31st, 2024. FEMA and dishes requested additional documentation and is reviewing before allowing the village to move ahead with the project. The bluff we've touched on, an extension was granted to fulfill additional information requests. Emergency Command Center, working with DASNY to get the reimbursement process moving since it has stalled at the state level. Suffolk County Jumpstart, Mill Creek Restoration, received a punch list from Suffolk County on outstanding items that they are awaiting from the village. Work is underway to address county concerns. We received our first payment requisition reimbursement for climate resiliency. You touched on the DASNY, on the Tucker House. We're receiving updated approvals for appraisals. They'll be sent along with corresponding paperwork to DASNY to continue to move forward with this project to clarify reimbursable portion of the grant. Tennis court bathrooms, we were awarded $49,000. And Endora blend crosswalks. There needs to be clarification on several items before a contract can be issued. The village is working to amend this grant award for different material to be used because the Endora blends is not common and there are nearly no vendors in tri-state area that work with it and would travel to Port Jefferson.
And the new
What's the
material
Endora
would be,
blend?
it's a material that you put on the crosswalks that make it, you know,
Make it visible?
more visible and
I'm sorry, so evidently.
reflective.
Evidently, it's an antiquated type of methodology. So we've actually discussed other types because the different materials now are much more reflective and they last longer. And so since the Endura blend is a past version, okay, it's unfortunate that the way the grant was written called out Endura blend.
Mhm.
So we're working with that and waiting for a response on whether we can proceed otherwise. We think we should be able to. We're hoping. We're hoping that comes in first.
And the $49,000 for the tennis court bathrooms, that project has been done, right? So is that reimbursement or is that for another project for the tennis court bathrooms?
It's a reimbursement.
It's a reimbursement, okay.
Yes. Yes. And that's the end of my report. The only thing, well, that's the end of Stephen's report. The only thing that I would add is, Tuesday, I will be being audited by Town of Brookhaven for our senior grant.
Oh, are you ready
Just
for
so
that?
Everybody's aware, yes.
Ready for that?
I keep all my documents.
Okay.
I'm good with that, so they'll be here Tuesday morning at 10 a.m.
Okay, all right. Sylvia, on your agenda for presentations for June 26th, I just want to add, I think KDEC is going to come and present, no, this is July 10th.
That's July.
They're coming to our July 10th work session to talk through the walkability study in person. Yeah. So just, that's something to, everybody can look forward to. You're coming back for that. All right. Attorney Moran, you should come back.
Does that walkability thing include like crosswalks and things like that? Safety?
Yeah, it is essentially a scan all the arterial village roads for what what safety mechanisms already exist and how wide the roads are and what challenges.
Sidewalks.
Yes, yeah, with sidewalks, medians, lines, all of it cataloged so that the village could better understand moving forward what's the low-hanging fruit on how to make the village more walkable, and then also what kind of grants and programs would the village want to take steps towards increasing the safety and walkability of the village from points of interest like our hubs of transit, our parks, our schools, all of it. So they analyzed this arterial network of roads connecting all these amenities, and also I think already created one proposal for Brook Road. Part of the contract was creating two sort of sample proposals, high level, not shovel ready. And I think there's still one more that the board can identify to ask them to create a proposal on how to make that section more walkable.
It's a great document. So, many pages.
Just briefly, Mayor, I did participate in a discussion in reference to the sign code. Andy Freeling gave a detailed presentation. I agree it wasn't as well attended as we had hoped, but it proved fruitful. Also working with the building department on enforcement issues, initially because of lack of enforcement in the past or non-uniform enforcement in the past. We used a carrot and stick approach where alerting certain businesses of possible code violations within their building and giving them the ability to come in and comply before we, carrot and stick, before we took out the stick and issued summonses and did those things. We're about there. I know we obtained some compliance and some positive feedback from business owners coming in and trying to bring their properties into compliance, and some others did not heed those warnings, and we're taking the next steps as they go.
Thank you. Michelle, before I wanted to thank you for stepping in for Stephen. So much better than he could have done.
Certainly quicker.
Yeah, certainly quicker. Very thorough, well prepared. No reason for you to be nervous whatsoever. Did great. Can we move on to the other business? We have 4 proposals, right? To discuss that we've all seen and heard of before. We've had time to review them. One is the busking request, and Steve from Amazing Olive and the Retailers Association came and presented formally that request for the pilot. And so I wondered if trustees have any questions or feedback on that. And if not, I think it's ready for us to make a decision and vote on at our next public meeting.
I thought it was a great presentation. I thought it was a very good presentation. I'm willing to try it. They're willing to take over or take upon themselves the vetting of everything and issue the permits, and I think it's definitely something we should try.
At the suggestion of Attorney Moran, we sent some of the proposed documentation, such as the waiver forms and other documents, to our insurance carrier, who suggested 1 or 2 modifications. And so assuming the board agrees with the pilot program, we'll bring that back to the organization.
Can you discuss the modifications, or is this the appropriate time?
Do a very minor.
Code of conduct type, alcohol and drug use.
Yeah.
Was one. The major one was regarding code of conduct, which they included into the program, and regarding alcohol and drug use, or lack thereof, basically. Okay.
Just on that topic, just to extrapolate some concerns that I had hearing the initial proposal. And I like the idea that it's a pilot project, because if the pilot doesn't work, we can put it out, right? That's the intent. There's concern of who's making the decisions of what music's appropriate on village property, right? and the average person who comes here on a whim to have an ice cream cone and sees what we're calling busking on our roadways, there's a content issue of that entertainment or that art that I advise we need to be careful of, and that we don't stick to one genre, that we don't haphazardly or arbitrarily deny some people who the decision makers might feel they don't like that style of music, or that whatever is going to be the entertainment on the street. Just, that's a concern of mine that I had to voice, because it's a real concern, so. Sometimes when you open the door a little, and you don't anticipate the flood of people that'll run through it to gain that attention, right? So just, I'm glad it's a pilot project.
You were cat through a crack.
I think it's, yeah, again, like we're saying, give it a shot. It was
It's a great idea.
obviously very well prepared, by the Retail Association. And are we putting a time, have we said, is it a 2-month pilot program? Is it a 6-month pilot? Is it season?
Yes, they dated it in their proposal. They said between the dates of Saturday and Sundays from noon to 4. Saturday village permit. Vetted, newly formed committee. Abide by sound ordinances. Code of conduct. I don't see dates on this document.
Yeah, it talks about the permit being good for the season, but it doesn't say what the season is.
I'll be sure to include that in the resolution.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
just wondering, while we're discussing, is it, is it a seasonal pilot, for a season, and then we discuss, is it 3 months, is it?
In the crafting of the resolution, the board is more than appropriate to set a time frame, but I would also add language that the village reserves the right to terminate the pilot program at any time for any reason, blah, 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 blah.
Okay.
Typical
So, yeah.
lawyer mumbo jumbo.
Okay, so maybe to give it a shot, we say it's for the first.
What is it,
season?
but what is the season here? Is it May 15th to after Labor Day? Is that, like, what is your
Labor Day
common season?
weekend, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
seems appropriate.
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, and then, with the, obviously, if they then want to extend the season, or, if it all goes well, then maybe the retailers are happy to have into the fall, whatever it is, but that sounds like a good,
Kick it up again for the holiday,
Yeah,
sure.
yes.
you know?
Yep. For the
See you
fall
boys.
season, the fall season.
Excellent.
All right, the parking committee recommendations. And their letter dated May 23rd. Have you all had a chance to review that? So the first is to, with consistency, message the parking signage along the roadways where there's parking time restrictions and hours of parking enforcement, that kind of thing.
Are we discussing item by item, or?
If you'd like to.
Yeah, I still can't, shake the feeling of, that we're leaving money on the table by not collecting, parking fees past 8 PM. I really think that the village is full up. I know that, we're not, the purpose of the parking program is for turnover chiefly, but again, offsetting the potential of taxpayers having to put money into the long-term maintenance of our lots, whereas these are visitors who are using them. I personally would like to see the time extended back to, I forget if it was 11 PM or midnight in the village lots.
Noted.
I think it was midnight.
Number 2 looks fine to me. which is replacing signage for all handicap parking stalls that have ramp access hashing to read 2-hour parking. So if it has ramp access hashing, it should say 2-hour parking. Our recommendation is to install a blue magnetic sign pole at each location. Create a seasonal parking pass for Belterre residents that can be utilized in the parking lots at a fee. In metered parking lots, pay for parking lots, not resident parking lots, for a fee of $100 per pass to encourage the patronage of village shops and restaurants. These passes should be of hang tag style and not the digital license plate version. These passes are to be utilized for the parking lots only, not for village beaches. Or again, not to provide access to resident parking. And it doesn't mean that parking is free along the roadways where hourly parking is.
Just a question. Thank you very much. So that's, is it $100 per household?
Right, yeah, my concern is that it's a pass, why are the passes hang tag style?
So they can transfer the pass from car to car, and it would be per household, yes. So instead of, parking license plate reader, is that what you're asking? What's the difference?
Yeah, I mean, when you get your Brookhaven parking, it's all license plate now, and it's, if you have multiple cars, you have to pay, either take that car every time you go down to a Brookhaven lot, or pay per car. Because otherwise, you could just pass this on to absolutely whomever.
Yes, you could. It's a household, so it's a household charge. If you have a car, and we do the same for employees, we do the same, it means that 2 or 3 cars per household are not parking in the village. It's 1 car per household in the village of Belterre. $100 for the season.
So it's 1 hanger per household?
Correct.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
And is that, have we talked to code about, is that gonna sort of gunk up their enforcement as they're going down, and then they read a plate that hasn't paid, and then they have to go and check to see that there's a hang tag?
They have to do that anyway. For merchants, for employees. Yeah, we have hang tags. How many hang tags did we print?
Right now, we have a number or a color. Right now, we have 2 different colors. The numbers, we printed hundreds, but we didn't give out that many, because we're only doing 1 per merchant.
So they should be used to it. They have 3 things kind of to look at, and that's the chalking or the license plate reading. They look at the inspection stickers, and they would have to look for hang tag before they wrote a ticket for a parking violation.
And this would be for the year?
Through the end of the parking
Right.
enforcement.
For the parking season?
Mhm.
Okay.
So after Dickens weekend, I
Mhm.
believe, they may be asking to change that in this too. And see, we've deliberated the possibility of creating a non-resident pass and have decided that it is not in the best interest of the managed parking program to have such a pass at this time.
That would be referring to like employees who might want to purchase a pass. So that's-
Merchant employees, people who like to, who
Yeah,
work in
here all the
Connecticut.
Sure.
People who work in Connecticut and walk on and off and want to park their car in the parking lot,
Right,
things like that.
so we don't think.
Like the town does, they charge
Right.
$358 for a non-town resident parking pass.
Right. No, I'd be curious to hear how the parking committee came to this conclusion. It seems like if the village could collect revenue up front and provide a convenience that doesn't, probably when it shakes out at the end of the day, the village isn't really losing money on the parking. But, I know being an employee here, you can either park in some of the free lots or on the streets, or if you say, I'm just gonna get my parking pass and be able to park here. That's something that I've always had interest in looking, you know, even if it's a high price tag on it, creates an option.
I don't disagree. We can get a little bit more of an explanation from them on why they would,
Yeah, would it be timed, would it be?
it's according to the, where you're parking and what lot you're parking
That's-
in.
Because I could see somebody parking their car and leaving it for a couple, I mean, maybe even a day.
Right.
Go over to, you know,
Yeah.
so we'd be losing the turnover.
Right.
Or people who work all the time in Connecticut, leaving their car.
Right.
Yeah.
And they park close to the shop and then it changes the turnover.
I think there's ways to do it. It might have, I mean, I think you have to hash it out. If someone from, let's say, Patchogue who comes down here all the time, and wants to buy a pass, but they're only here for 2 hours, or they have to still move the car within a certain period of time. I know it might defeat the pass thing, but it makes it easier for them. They just park, they don't have to pay. But they still have to turn over the spot after a certain amount of time. Maybe you get a little extra time instead of 2 hours, maybe 2.5. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here.
I mean, the interesting thing is you can take the QR code and you can pay for your parking before you even leave your house. So,
There
right?
you go.
So, the one thing that occurs to me on what the town does with their parking fees is they don't really have storefronts that they are looking to manage parking around. It's a completely different purpose that the town has with their parking management than the village does. Right, so. The committee is requesting that there be dedicated enforcement agents by foot during managed parking times to enforce parking regulations and also be trained to assist patrons needing help paying for parking, whether it be by meter or by phone. And by this, they mean seasonal or employees. So,
I've seen our people with the scanners over the weekend. I thought I did.
sure, that
What's
our
during the week?
code enforcement is doing that. But they
Kind of what you've been doing vigorously in that lot right here,
are.
before one. Because it used to have no enforcement.
So they are dedicated employees to do that work, right?
Specifically Thursday through Sunday. Sole purpose, sole purpose,
Sole purpose,
8 hours,
yeah. And that's
4 to 12.
That's us too. I mean, we're 8 hours a day, 12 to 8, right? So we're considering that seriously, and if you have any response, reaction to that concept, say it now.
And that was word about in line. It's not that way everywhere. That was word about in line for turnover, to keep the influx of people coming and going to service the downtown.
Well, years ago, we used to have.
Doesn't like
Doesn't like them. Years ago, we used to have it, we talking about code enforcement,
Mhm.
seasonal. We had that, they were specifically for that. They were called ATOs, appearance ticket officers. And they just went around, that's what their job was supposed to be, is just to go around, and I don't know.
Still in the code.
I don't know
We
how.
still
we
have
got-
ATOs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
we
don't know
do.
how we got away
My
from
neighbor
that.
was one.
Yeah. And wasn't your son an ambassador for parking at one
He
point?
was. He used to empty meters. And help people with,
How to
how to
put the
do it.
money in and everything, which is still an issue for our meters. Requesting the removal of space numbers in the parking lot to eliminate confusion for patrons. We were previously a pay-by-space village, now we are a pay-by-plate village, the numbers aren't needed. And it is confusing, because, you know, people want-
Confused me on something.
Even you?
I saw the number and I'm like, you forget the number. We don't need the number. We need the number. It's on the street. Did not confuse my wife.
I was just, you do admit that to her, didn't you?
Absolutely.
At the request of code, and we agreed to repaint the numbers on curb for Main Street, East Main Street, Arden, and Broadway to assist in enforcing street parking times. Repaint the numbers. So,
Is this painting the parking time on the curb?
No, the spaces are numbered so that when an enforcement officer checks the car, he knows that spot 118 was, I don't know, a blue Ford.
Spots
And when he
are
comes
numbered.
back in an
Okay.
hour, or whatever the time is, 118 is supposed to be empty by now of a blue Ford.
Yep.
With whatever registration.
recommending for safety purposes that the parking space in front of Billy's be removed. It's difficult to see pedestrians in the crosswalk when there is a vehicle parked in that space.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's so.
I'm feeling
The other
bad
day I
about
was
that.
going home and there was this humongous truck
Mm-hmm.
pulling in.
Yeah,
He was backing into the spot and you could not see.
No, I always, I live here, so I know to drive so slowly in that area,
Yeah.
for people who don't, or people who aren't being mindful. I've seen so many close calls.
so does that require a local law to remove that parking spot?
It's entitled to legislative equivalency. How is that spot put in? So that's how we have to treat that.
I don't know.
I don't actually know words. Legislative equivalency. That makes me sound like it's.
So is there any,
Who has that record?
is
It's
there
been
any
there
harm
forever.
to going through the process of passing a rule to remove it?
We can create our own legislative equivalency.
Or you just remove, right?
Right.
That spot, I'm sure that spot is not in code. Yeah, that particular spot.
Right.
Okay,
Wait
so
a
you'll
second,
check the
something's
code,
missing
Sylvia,
here.
and then we'll work with DPW to remove it if that's,
If it's not in the code, it's just remove it.
okay, requesting replacement of the 12 physical meters that are still in operation. This season in particular have proved to be difficult to use, non-reliable, and software updates are near impossible to complete. The bid has set aside funds to contribute to this capital improvement project in the amount of $23,000. In addition, we would like the village to look into having a lighted weather covering to identify where the pay stations are at night and to protect from the elements. The bid has set aside an additional $12,000 as a contribution to the portion of that project as well. So Stephen has gone out for estimates. He's asked for 3 estimates and is waiting for the third and is issuing a deadline for that. So hopefully we'll be making a decision on that soon.
What are those first 2 estimates?
We don't have them.
Oh,
He
And you
has
want to say
them.
that, they're waiting for a third one, you want to review
sure,
it
sure, sure,
first.
sure.
Oh, the first 2 estimates are like $1,000 each.
For each. Okay.
No, kidding. Michelle gets it. Because it's about money. No, they're not $1,000 each.
No, I'm like, that's the cheapest thing government's ever done.
Yeah, no, nope.
I do have to, you know, obviously not knowing the numbers, but I've been walking my dog through the village lots, and I stop and help people to try to help them navigate the QR or the phone, you know, and I think we, having switched our email system, I have a deepened empathy for elderly folks in technology. Just change, I'm not looking at you.
Look at me. Technology is not my strong suit, clearly.
But no, the frustration that it's something new, you're not used to it, they just want to pay and go to dinner, and so I think having these physical stations still is something that, you know,
Yeah.
ideally we phase out, but practically.
And the technology is apparently so much better.
Yeah, and I think when I talked to James, these were simplified machines, so they're more concise, maybe they don't take paper bill, I forget, that there were less there's less potential for issues with these,
Yeah.
so.
I also think it would be beneficial to do a QR code campaign.
Yeah.
To say, pay before you stay, that kind of thing. Oh, you like that one, Zoe?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so looks like we got through all those. That was good. Next on the list is what? So we had busking, we had parking.
The election task force.
Oh. Okay. So who wants to start the discussion on that? We're good?
Looks like there's 4 recommendations.
I think there was just one.
There was just one.
No, 4 recommendations, 3 that didn't change anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Only one that was a change.
Yes. Question from pure ignorance. Does the current code have term limits for trustees?
No. No.
I voiced it then and I'll voice it now. It's because it's not uniform for trustees and mayor with term limits, the wrong group at the wrong time can set it up that they're in power in perpetuity. Or 40 years, the way I did it. So it's odd to me that they would make a recommendation that the mayor can only sit for 8 years, but trustees have no limit. So the 3 of us are a voting conglomerate. I'm mayor this year, you're mayor, you're mayor. I'm mayor, you're mayor, you're mayor. And we could do that for a very long time.
Yeah, but I think that the best term limit in that sense would be the voters, you know.
And why not term everybody? That's just, again, my
Sure.
opinion.
Yeah.
It's right for the wrong people to take advantage. Term limits, I think, should be uniform.
And should they be retroactive?
I don't think it can be.
No, I don't think that's legal.
Legally.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
No, I hear.
Wait, my question, I don't know if
I
that,
don't know if they can be, I should say.
so it's retroactive in that there are,
I think, just, excuse me, it's just popping into my head. I think is if you can't complete the next term, let's say, if you're currently sitting and it's a 10-year term and you can't complete the next term,
Mhm.
then you can't run.
Mhm.
I think that's the restriction.
What if you're, like, for example, let's say Stan was the mayor for 10 years and he took a break. Can he come back, if this is enacted, can he then come back and run for mayor and serve for 8 more years?
Doesn't it depend on whether or not he served before the law was passed?
Yes, if he was mayor from, 2008 to 2000 whatever, and it was 10 years, and then and then the law passed today, I don't think I would say he's probably not restricted from running again, but that next term would have to be for whatever the term limit is. But he could be mayor again for 8 years. I don't think there's a restriction. It'd be hard for me to articulate legally that this would prevent someone who was mayor at the time. It's all about equity, right? Had I known this was coming, maybe I wouldn't have sat for as long as I sat, right? So I would think that a law being applied to someone prior to its enactment would not be fair and just.
Well, I hear the fear that you're sharing. I don't know that we've ever had anyone serve 24 years on the Board of Trustees here. It would be some incentive structure to,
Look at Paul Pontieri,
well, he's up to what?
30?
Isn't that money?
Vinnie Beauvais,
Sure.
he was the mayor of Belterre for 30 years.
Right, so,
There was the mayor, Frank Trotter was the mayer forever.
30
The
years.
village justice was the mayor for almost 40 years.
Yeah.
Judge Rowe
Yeah.
in Belfort.
but
It happens.
it
Can happen.
It
I
can-
don't think anyone here would do that, but it's.
well, but exactly to that point. So I said, I don't think we've had anyone serving as a trustee for 24 years. I think the mayoral role is unique in that the mayor directs the staff, the mayor, what's it?
I kind of agree with Dave. I don't see, I'd like to hear the explanation as to why trustees have no term limits, but the mayor does.
So I think the logic there is that, I think we've discussed in the past is that, again, the mayor directs the staff, the mayor sort of at the, you know, has the role on the board. But if the mayor, say, serves 8 years, but then wants to continue, you know, there's projects that were being worked on by the Board of Trustees in the village, prior to the mayorship or after the mayorship, not having a restriction on how many years that individual wants to serve as a trustee. It's just about having that role, you know, of mayor, and then not being restricted of continuing to serve the village otherwise. I think, you know, as a trustee, we've all come on with our you know, our interests, our projects. And I think restricting someone in that capacity to be a voice on the board, it's a different dynamic. We don't have the same.
So, and again, I'm just,
Is this legal?
yeah, it could be, yeah, it could be. Does the mayor then have the right, I just want to try and understand what you said, so did the mayor have the right then to, after 8 years, run for trustee
Yeah.
and stay on the board?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's in their recommendations. A mayor after serving 8 years may then choose to run for trustee.
Well, the US government says it.
Right, there you go, yeah, and we have had in our history presidents.
The
who
president can't, has a term limit, but senators.
Oh, I'm not against,
Right.
I'm not
I-
against term limits, just so
I
you're
don't-
aware.
I'm for term limits.
I just think it's odd that it's not uniform. I just think it's odd.
No, but,
I just think it's odd.
actually, that's
And
the best point that
To
we
your
heard.
point, your initial point was, wouldn't the arbiter then still be the same ballot box? If they wanted to change things up?
I think it's,
There's nothing preventing the former mayor from running for trustee,
I think that's.
right? I mean, it doesn't mean that you can't run for trustee, and if you're trustee for 8 years, you're termed out after 8 years, same as the mayor. But you can still serve for 16 years. I mean, versus 30, or, I don't know.
so it says,
So you could become a trustee for 2 years and then go back to be mayor for another 8 years?
Mm-mm.
I don't think so.
no, it's an 8
It's a-
total
it's a hard
lifetime.
stop. It's a hard stop for me.
Yeah, or you could be mayor for 4 years, not be mayor for 6 years, and then come back for a maximum
Another
of
4
4
years.
again.
It's actually 16 years.
What?
No,
No,
8 years.
A term
Total.
limit of 8 years.
Right.
no?
Right.
A
total.
term limit is two years, no?
No, well, so it would be 4 terms.
Well, the
for
term
8
is 2
years.
years, so it'd be 4 2-year
Yeah.
terms.
Oh,
And max out.
Yeah, but no, just circling back to the point that in the US government, the president, and I think that's exactly it, the president has certain powers and duties that senators or members of Congress do not have. And so having that role turning over consistently keeps a person from building enough power and having control over this, that, and the other, which is a concern to all of us in our democracy. I think discussing, you know, term limits for senators and congresspeople is another very interesting discussion. But again, it's having the person sort of at the top of the pyramid, not being able to keep that role, but being able to return to another body of government, another role, to continue serving if that's what they choose to do, in perpetuity if they want to. I think, again, you know, I don't know how many lifelong trustees we have here, but this makes sense to me.
It's interesting that, you know, when attending these SCBO meetings where there's other mayors there and talking about them being termed out, it just puts a fine point, lame duck mentality on what they're doing, on their work. And talking to with Mayor Padjock, who ran unopposed again, just said, there's more work to do. He keeps running because the projects continue and continue. But then there are other mayors, like Mayor of Amityville and Mayor of Brightwaters, who are terming out, and it sort of disincentivizes the prospect of continuing to work hard.
I would hope not. I mean,
You would hope not.
but
But
also.
you can see it, it's like, and I'm not saying they're not working hard, they are working hard, but it's like.
Right. No, but also
Just
again.
kind of fade away, oh, lame duck.
Well, but being able to, if the spirit is there's more work to be done, then you can run as trustee and continue and support, and hopefully you've built a coalition, not like a, sort of this is the three of us or a voting block coalition, but if the work was being supported by all of the trustees, and whether it's another trustee or another resident that comes and runs for the mayorship, that you will be able to continue your work, the work that you were carrying out as a mayor, and bring that value to the board and hand that baton over, but still continue serving your public. I just think we've seen, there are some instances where a mayor can be the mayor for 30 years and the public's supportive, but, I think, again, sometimes there's, like the president, I think if our president was in power in perpetuity until that person came out of power, there's then that incentive to maybe fix things to help themselves stay in power, within the government, and there's that danger there. Getting an incumbent out of office is always more difficult than it's an open seat, and now, you have fresh voices and opportunity.
I don't know, I like the idea of having term limits for both. 8 for mayor, 8 for trustee.
Here's a novel idea. What about putting this up for referendum?
Could we? Would that be allowed? I don't think
I
it
think-
would be.
As I sit here, I don't know that answer. Clerk Burlow's telling me they went through that effort already, and the answer was no. I don't know that.
But didn't the county recently put term limits on? And that was a referendum.
Again, as I sit here off the top of my head, I know you can change terms via resolution or a legislative equivalency if it's in your code. But term limits, I think you have the authority via local law to do it. Not saying you can't.
We have the authority to, but if the board is sitting here scratching our heads saying, what do we want? I think we could learn a lesson from.
You articulated earlier, and I believe you to be correct, referendums are meant for very specific
Right.
reasons. I'm not sure this is one of them.
Is that something we can get an answer?
We have voting council, right? We have election
And it would be a
council.
yes or no, and it would probably have to be both, unless you're only gonna put one.
Right.
Or you could do,
Shall the terms of the mayor and the board of trustees be limited to 4 terms?
or you could have 2 items on the referendum.
Yeah.
Shall the term of the mayor be limited? Shall the term of the trustees be limited?
Having recently lived through a termed out mayor, that last 6-8 months was difficult in getting anything done. It was just difficult.
Yeah,
Anticipating the new administration.
yeah.
Huh.
Not even that, it was a lame duck situation, it wasn't through his choice to, it was just getting
The village stagnated.
to work, yeah.
But flip it on its head, you have maybe, someone's in office for a long time and there's a mayoral race and they're not sure, what's gonna happen next, and they try to shove through a bunch of projects and legislation before their term ends. So we can,
Right, you
Play
can go
both
back and forth
sides,
because.
but I think for me, the lesson I learned when we looked to make any changes to our village elections as a board was that the public wants a voice in it. And so if we're legally able to put this to referendum.
I can tell you that municipal home rule gives you the power to do it. Now, whether or not you can put it out to referendum if you choose will have to be looked.
And that's the answer I would really like to see, and that I would rather give our public the opportunity to have a robust discussion around this and make their voices heard, because I'm telling you, last time we tried to do anything with the elections.
Well, that was a totally different subject. Yeah.
Right, but still, it's, you know, for me, the
I see both
takeaway
sides
is
of it.
let the people have a way, it's the people's village. And I think current electeds, you know, again, we're elected to make decisions for this village, but this is one of those more sensitive subjects, and if we're legally allowed to do it, that's what I would prefer to do.
And that coming from someone who's
Not
a
gonna-
lame duck.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Ah,
you
what
know,
did I
say?
but-
I can see
Exactly,
both
so
sides of it.
just.
What did you just call me?
I'm sorry, but just because she knows that she has 2 meetings left, she still is very
Lanes.
Oh, thank you, Drew.
swan, good.
Yeah.
But she's still actively participating.
It's both sides.
Right.
My job is the council.
Sure, absolutely.
And having some experience,
Mhm.
I would like to share.
Well, so,
So I think we'll see if we can, if it is something that we can put on a referendum.
if we agree on what is being referred.
Yeah.
I think we should discuss it further. I'm not ready to actually make any kind of, actually, I'm ready to say, let's leave it as it is for now, but that's just one person's opinion. I would also suggest a harder look at 4-year terms. And if you want to do term limits, 4-year terms impact the amount of work that does get done without having to campaign in between. And that to me, and it's not a selfish thing, because I 4 years is a long time, but for anybody who wants to get a lot of work done, the 4 years enables that process, so you don't have to, I'm repeating myself, but stop and start campaigning over a 6-month period of time.
Yeah.
Raise money, do all this other stuff, when you could be actually doing the work of people that elected you. So if there was gonna be a referendum, that's kind of what I would like to see on the referendum. Do you want 4-year
Belport
terms?
just did it.
They did?
They
Their
did.
last meeting, they moved the terms to 4 years.
At the next election, right?
Can you change the deputy treasurer to 2 years?
No.
I would just look to,
That was cruel.
Michelle knows me.
You have to meet every year.
I'm
Yes,
doing it
every
every year.
Yeah, so it's clerk.
Right, so you drew, don't you think I should, it
Yeah,
should
the-
go to 2 years?
The people who are appointed every year.
Okay.
Mhm.
I mean, we asked.
Clerk and treasurer.
Mhm.
Really?
Mhm.
No, clerk and treasurer, 2 years.
Yeah.
Oh, they are?
Yes, 2 years. 2 years.
Oh, darn it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You're stuck with you.
Anyway, just in the, I don't know, in the spirit of us creating these committees with the idea of listening to our residents, you know, there were, I forget how many people, approximately 7 people on this task force who spent months and did tons of research. And I want to respect their time and their recommendations and, you know, the discussions that they had. And really, you know, not necessarily dismiss and maybe, if, you know, we're wanting more feedback from them, how they came to these decisions, whatever it is. But I want to be sure that we're, you know, respecting the time and efforts of our village residents who put together.
Are you implying that we don't respect that?
I'm just saying that, sort of, you know, looking at it and saying, well, maybe we do something different from the recommendation without further engaging in, I'm not implying that we don't respect them, I'm just saying I don't want to have that be the feeling, that residents spend time and then the board says, well, I don't know, you know, it just, I'm not saying that the board has to always take recommendations, I just think we should take them very seriously.
You're implying that we don't take it seriously?
I am, no, I don't know.
Yeah, think about what you're saying. I mean, we invited them to do this, so obviously we we respect their time and the work they put into it. I think,
They basically, they only made one change to the existing situation.
Right.
I think the election
election day should be changed,
election date.
the dates?
Yeah. Because you're coming into a budget that's not yours.
Right, then you have to change the budget date too.
No, because if you have at least if you're coming into June 1, your budget date
It's June
starts June 1. If your election's in March, then you create your own budget. You know?
So there might be other things to talk about with this, with the committee.
After the budget is in place.
You are elected, right now you are elected as the budget.
What about inviting, I know they made a presentation to the Board of Trustees, but what about inviting them to a workshop to have a dialogue with the people?
I think that would be
That'd
a good idea. Yeah. I mean, that's where Zena presented it, right, in the workshop
Mhm.
setting.
Right.
But maybe we could invite everybody who participated and just have
And I know they were here when.
a deeper dialogue.
They were all
Yeah,
here, but it was presented, yes.
Committee was
I
here.
think there was
They
one
were.
person that couldn't be here,
yeah,
maybe.
Yeah.
yeah. So maybe bring it back.
Do a roundtable discussion of things.
Right.
Agreed. Cool. Okay, that's what we'll do, Sylvia. And there was one other thing.
The Maggio proposal.
Yeah. So. Changing the agreement, the permit agreement with Maggio in the middle of the year, it seems kind of counterintuitive. However, Stanley Momagino was very open to having residents call him, speak to him, negotiate a different type of rate. Some residents I've heard have done that. And he handed out his card and it was posted, and we promoted it. His proposal to call for pickup of bulk any Wednesday of the month was very generous and and I think that was something that was more efficient for them. So I don't know if we have to change the permit, Sylvia, in order to make that happen, or if it's just a sort of a handshake, go ahead and do that. I don't know, but,
I'll review that with Attorney Moran,
okay.
and we'll devise whatever we need to do for the agenda,
For a resolution,
if need be.
if need be. Anybody have questions about what was discussed, or?
I'm still a little stuck on the picking up the recycling with the garbage and putting it in the same truck. I know that there's an invitation to go toward the facility. I'm working on scheduling that. It doesn't make sense to me that residents would sort their recycling out and put out different, put out paper and cardboard one week and mixed, plastic and metal the other week. And then it all just gets thrown into the same truck with food waste and diapers and,
Right, so then why are we sorting it?
Right, and I don't want the,
You don't have to sort it.
I-
And as he pointed out, most garbage, and I do it, I don't throw just raw garbage in my can, it's in a plastic bag.
I understand, but the system, the pneumatics that press back, those
I think
bags.
you have to see it.
Right,
It's an interesting process.
I'm just,
It's also the cleanest garbage.
I think
haven't
before
been in it, but I
we
can buy
talk
it.
about this, I do think it's important to go to the plant and see exactly how it works. And it's their business practice, he talks about it very knowledgeably. I'm looking forward to a trip to the plant to see how that's actually working.
so are we able to accept the bulk pickup change, but not the?
We'll find out. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
No.
Did we set a date on that yet?
No.
You
That's
want a
right.
mask?
No, I did not wear a mask in the Tucker house. I'm not gonna have to wear a mask in the recycling plant.
Is this something that we can all go to, or are we limited to just two of us?
It's, don't ask,
You can go. You can go.
we can all go, right, on the same, at the same time. Sort of like the ethics training, we all attended the ethics training on the same day.
It's education.
So we're not writing a resolution on that right now.
Well,
Check on-
Sylvia will determine if it's required to change the bulk pickup aspect of the agreement, if it's required, if a resolution's required, or if we just need to advertise it and promote it to our residents.
Okay.
That's what's happening this
So,
fall.
but we're only currently discussing the bulk pickup change, not the recycling garbage change. There are two things proposed here. The first is the garbage collection for residents will remain 2 times a week, and the residents can put their recyclables out with their garbage. They can put them out with the first pickup of the week or the second, totally up to the resident, and he clarified that they would be picked up in the same truck. And that's, yeah, because right now there's 2 trash pickups a week and then 1 recycling a week.
My guess, even though there's a blue can out there, it's all going in the same place because it's all hand sorted.
But coming from the background that I do, I know like paper and cardboard specifically, you can't put a pizza box, out for recycling because it has grease on it.
Although
So-
he said you could, I know.
Well,
I always thought the same thing.
And what happens if you do?
then it would get
Does it
sorted
contaminate?
out.
It does.
But if you
It's
put,
actually happening already.
My understanding is that they have their business practices, apart from what the average person believes recycling and everything else is, based on a couple of factors, one being the commodity itself, and the repercussions they have if they don't sort their garbage anyway. So if people are half recycling and putting their cans on top of whatever's on the bottom, and they just treat it like recycling and are caught not separating it anyway, that has significant regulatory repercussions to them. So they sorted everything anyway. That's
You
just
can't
what they
just let it
do.
go through
They
because
just can't
they
let
know that
anything go
people don't
through.
do it themselves.
right, but there are also incentives for any waste company to maybe not take cardboard, plastics out of the waste stream because they actually burn hotter, and it means they have to use less fuel to burn the trash as it does in an incinerator in order to make it into ash. So they actually like having plastics and cardboards in the trash. So I think that there's incentives on both sides to, yes, they can sell the recycling, but we know that, with the past 15 years and how recycling plants in the States have shut down, and China dropped their rates for buying bulk bales of recycling, there's not a great incentive financially for waste companies to be sorting out clean recycling because they don't sell for as much. So my concern here is that there's more of an incentive to keep these items mixed in with the regular trash because of the next step, which is sort of an incentive to incinerate it instead of recycling it and keeping it in our product stream. I think, yeah, so I'd like to go on a trip, even past my lame duck period. But I wonder if, could we ask, to make the bulk pickup change if it's not a very onerous thing, and then, they say we reduce, if you make both changes, you reduce the rates by 10%, can they reduce the rate by 5% if you make the bulk pickup change, and then give time for the trustees to go investigate? Because I know a number of residents came up to me after the proposal and were confused. I appreciate the president coming and speaking too. Just came up with the CAC as well. It's something that I think needs more clarity before moving forward.
So I'll just try and extrapolate this to the end, which is to say, no matter what we decide on 1, 2, or 2 alone, they're still gonna operate the way they operate, right?
Yes, but if there's a greater effort being made by the residents, you know, say the status quo effort by the residents and it's a different truck picking up all the waste, there's still statistically, and he did say this, that yes, it will be cleaner to have, you know, they still have to sort it, but they're not sorting, you know, apple cores and diapers from cardboard, which is a different sorting of, you know, plastic lined cardboard from regular box cardboard, for example. Is it, I know that, you know, we want to make sure our residents have the opportunity to save on their waste pickup. Is this something, if a field trip is scheduled for late June, early July, that then, you know, there's just a month delay and then you come back and look at making either both changes or one of the changes instead of having Sylvia go through all the everything for the one?
Goal is to go on that trip ASAP.
Right.
And Sylvia will work it out with Stanley to see, and Attorney Moran to see what we have to do or what we don't have to do in order to accept an offer, change it, or leave it as status quo. All I know is, no. All right, I'll leave it there. I know how people throw out their trash. Some are very conscientious about it, and some are unaware of how to be conscientious about it, so
I
it
got
gets
a
mixed up.
neighbor, it was a rental, the blue can was full of regular garbage,
Mhm.
and it got picked up.
Yeah,
With the recycling.
It was the blue can.
Yeah.
yeah. So,
They just had a lot of people there.
Mhm.
all right, we have a couple of items for executive session. Are we voting after executive session, Sylvia? No, right? All right, so does that mean that we can, what's the process for here? What's the point of order? If we go to executive session, do we have to come back here and adjourn, or can we adjourn down there?
I'll defer to Attorney Moran, but I don't think so. I think the
I have no issue with you adjourning downstairs if there's no business to be had after.
Okay. So making that notification, Jewel, you're aware?
Yep.
Okay. So do we have a motion to go into executive session?
motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Well, going into exec to discuss.
7:42, to discuss contract negotiation and the specific performance of a particular employee.
Second.
Oh, aye.